That's a huge risk, especially with the market value and that may. At the same time, there's also the risk of fees.
I think so. No, you do. So it's not that fault either. I've just seen it, and
So in these cases, we don't.
you don't start
Much more about it.
I don't know. Would I want to get it?
No issue.
SIG itself is not the patch. And I can even talk about your email. What that is.
That's your justice for health. Medical analogy. It's like.
So long running.
Because Carlos was just reminding us about we had the idea.
And then into some experience.
Well, we wanted
To my bag. My schedule. So as far as what and versus the sort of the column.
Because,
There's a subset, I think, that
we just recorded certain time.
changes.
About
actual vulnerabilities in the tooling.
So.
But I am interested.
But like, as far as if people want to report things about
Yes.
having outdated.
Substantive.
It's not really much to be.
No, we don't have a user list. Just OpenStack discuss. We used to have two or the other lists, but we consolidate. So you can always just send an email there, but I mean,
It comes to.
I'm interested in like stuff, you know.
That consistent
of users.
Gross and we're testing for that branch. All it, falling on the images.
Like yeah. You can start your own page.
Some stuff is just like, it's there and it happens.
Right, as long as.
It's like a titration.
That as it is. Why we
The
keep
real risk.
transfers in, but you know,
And the hardware.
the constraint files are not as
Not really.
security
Okay.
information.
$1 million.
So the vulnerability is most of the cryptography library. Stable analog images are going to have cryptography that's contemporary with the analog.
We were planning to be.
Version of cryptography that's not.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a question.
It's
But that's
the value
at
trade-off
the
there.
end of it, like a.
There's a natural value trade-off between the two. And the reality is most of the commercial products have.
Yes, I think that's the
Hiding and masking.
important thing to combine.
And adding.
Those images are for demonstration and. They
Really not carried on.
Reality is.
have this exposed.
And I'm all
So heading of all of the components that are going into this. And updating them yourself when there are vulnerabilities announced for the components in
like last idea.
the business of tracking what vulnerabilities are announced.
I'm.
Oh, yeah, I want
Discuss.
that.
To make an observation. So that, that's an old. Now that you've got.
For those people without the
Actually, good idea would be
Waiting
to
to
also.
I see,
And just put a link.
Yes, concern. Cat.
As well.
Dude, it's like starts talking it's like.
From my perspective. when
Fix that.
Oh, okay.
So that you have a.
It is.
You got it. So the. And it-
Speaking to stuff.
This doesn't.
Presentation, maybe practice in America.
That's the to also tailor the.
Expanding.
To the perception and to what they want.
That's not a problem. Yeah.
Those users.
I,
Well, and header, we
Sorry, red hat.
have like a convention for how the
Room is very cool.
no
Stuff.
ad hoc standard, there's no real list of.
Like
Which
It's really cool there.
and
But
so
so I just loaded
we
up.
happen to know because we're dealing with
my phone.
now with the group systems there.
Speaking
First, broader task, then yeah, I think.
Like,
That's the regular.
I like that idea.
Get it out of my mouth, you know.
Part of
I was some kind of combination of cold enough to shiver, also very caffeinated. I thought I was past that, you know, inability to speak. People thing, but you.
Yeah, I think that's how it's supposed to work.
That's happened to me before. Slides come up, you have control. Didn't take a minute. I think this.
It happens to everybody.
Last bit, because. Yeah, that's our, we do a lot of technical work sitting down.
Our major concern.
Everything is
More energy
filtered
for-
and access.
It's in our. Splitsure, right?
I don't really know what.
Self-service.
For us, that usually breaks down into like, well, I need
Almost like you have to.
I think you.
100 terabyte a project.
We weren't able to get any response from, we enacted the plan of Keystone for security review. Apparently.
So just.
I think it's easy.
We have
80 gig.
A100
You got
stash
hide in the back there?
maximum
your
embargo
desk somewhere.
Topic.
with
They have
this
40 gig section.
compelled us to go ahead and switch that.
Infrastructure buying.
Public, so that.
Yeah.
Like,
Happens when
and save money.
when you buy the first.
As a member, I have a hard time talking to
Oh, that's fun.
Z about the lack of response from teams on things that are inherently private discussions. There's no evidence that I can point to
General.
unless something is public.
Is,
I can say, hey, look, here's a bug. that I had to get.
ultimately you said you were nervous because. These things.
I have, yeah, and like sometimes it's like a big deal.
Your first rodeo, I think, it's like.
Series
Time period.
like
Period. Go under embargo. Really. Seeing it.
I kept screwing up the slide thing and was like,
Well, if we had like. Seaman volunteered to be.
That means.
Use it.
It's where we're not able to get a response from
See 20.
team,
Noise.
vulnerability management liaison or PTL for the team.
Not very good anyway. And then just enough that. Someone spoke.
Set of TC members.
Want to make it out. I had to say, I'm sorry, they weren't really
We got
doing the thing with the microphone that they were supposed to do.
large meeting rooms.
C
C21.
I think that I just. Speak up.
Suites.
Eggs.
And there were lots of people, very good.
How long they can access.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Barely nobody wanted to all sit in a room.
That's definitely. Exited.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm so glad.
Times get up, on schedule.
Used.
I figure out when we're supposed to start.
Kind of,
The virtual conference.
Was supposed to start at 20 after, so.
Work your way through 200 up.
We'll start in. Probably.
this is the inaugural.
They always do.
I think she just. I wonder whether this is this is. Full-on production. America.
I mean, kind of, yeah.
Or something working.
By November 1st.
Yeah.
Not happening before that.
No, I think the last one was the
Original.
Thing not working.
It wasn't, that wasn't an open day though. The office meetup.
Good time.
Only good ideas.
I don't think I've ever actually
Good anything.
You're lucky that you at least managed to get.
like days.
During the
do anything.
inflation, but not.
A lot bigger.
Yeah. No, but I thought it was good to say that. Days. America.
Our order.
The first.
There's like the bridge, and so. There's no 6 months.
Oh, LA.
So
That's an even.
control funding.
Those.
It's Canadian dollars.
Oh, okay.
US dollar.
I think we were supposed to start this one at 11:35.
Well, that's right. Yeah. So that-
We've got a,
Being observant.
I think we can go ahead. So as has been noted, the URL to this Etherpad is not the one that we've been.
What?
I have gone into Sched, or sorry, into Etherpad that was in Sched and updated it to have a link to them. This is another installment of an ongoing effort that we've been working on. So started with a focus group effort that I dubbed Series 0. Then opened a thread on the mailing list, which was Series 1. There was a session in the Suwon OpenInfra Asia Summit that was the Series 2, and now we're on to the third here at OpenInfra Days North America. So a brief introduction for those who have not seen the abstract or mailing list thread. A few years ago, during a technical committee meeting, we were talking about feedback that the foundation receives from member organizations when folks like Jimmy or others are talking to them, trying to encourage them to contribute for projects like OpenStack. And a number of times they have attempted to contribute, have run into bottlenecks, problems, struggles, challenges, and so folks at the foundation get that feedback firsthand, secondhand from the stakeholders who are in touch with the software developers at those member organizations who have been trying to get more involved. The OpenStack would like to have more people involved in the project to continue to be able to place people who move on to do other things in their careers. So the project can. And so we would like to be able to address the challenges that some of these organizations who have an incentive to contribute, but are not doing so or are not very successful at it, can have their path smoothed a bit. During the focus group discussions, it came to light that the sorts of challenges that were being reported to the foundation from these member organization representatives were actually challenges that are experienced by people that in the community we tend to think of as successful contributors of people who've been in the project for a very long time, or prolific authors of changes that are getting reviewed in a somewhat timely fashion and are getting encouraged consistently and that sort of thing. So, initially we kind of wanted to look at, well, we have organizations who want to contribute, but they're running into problems. People who are known successful contributors in the community, what are they doing that we can sort of find some better guidance to bring these other organizations into the fold. And so I think that's kind of where we started gravitating with the discussions, analysis that we performed of various incidents that we got feedback about. The issues predominantly boiled down to coordination, communication, the expectations of people in different parts of that interaction. The issues that they encountered were perhaps surprisingly for a lot of people not related to tooling. They're organizations with skilled software developers who are potentially contributing to other open source projects as well. And, different projects use different tools. And as a developer, if you want to be involved in a variety of different communities, you kind of need to be able to figure out how to work with the tools that that project uses. You don't really go in expecting them to change their tooling to suit you. They've got systems that are already working for them. And so you kind of figure out what you're doing to meet them where they are. And so really the issues did all boil down to being communication related, I think. And that successful contributors were experiencing a lot of the same communication issues that we were seeing the contributions from organizations who were struggling. So we've been putting together this series of discussions to sort of try to find potential solutions, recommendations, things that we can ultimately start rolling into project documentation like the contributor guide, the contributing organizations guide, the project team guide, recommendations, not just for contributors who are struggling, but also interacting with them and find ways to kind of smooth that to help equalize expectations and so on. So I'm gonna sit down so we can kind of go through some of the stuff that has come up and some prompts for ways that we can come up with other ideas. Put this down for the benefit of people who want to do. So before we jump into there are links there. They're to the top of the Etherpad to the artifacts from the previous discussions I mentioned. So at your leisure, you can browse those. The basic recommendations and findings, we sort of lumped into 3 categories: review bandwidth related issues, issues around mentoring or lack of mentorship for newcomers, and strategy and etiquette for code review. And some suggestions there, which one of the goals here was that we find actionable recommendations, not, try harder kind of solutions. We understand that projects are under resource constraints, chiefly amongst them people to do code review and to mentor newcomers and that sort of thing. So trying to find ways to utilize the resources of the people that we have in the project more efficiently, make things easier for them so that they can be more useful to the people that they're trying to help integrate into developer community as well. So we had some ideas like the Nova team was talking about a review dashboard prioritization scheme that they've been relying on using Etherpads to sort of bubble up reviews that are not seeing enough attention. Some of the teams are using things like review priority votes in code review to try to help communicate to the community as a whole what is a priority for the team that cycle, so that a lot of the challenges, as I said, boil down to expectation issues, and people who are struggling to contribute in many cases simply don't realize that the team's priorities are elsewhere and not a particular feature or improvement that they're personally invested in. So being able to better communicate some of that. Yes, Julia.
So I think this comes to mind because I've had several businessy related discussions as of recent in the community, and a lot of times what gets discussed in the community in terms of team priority is also disjointed from business priority, and reframing the conversation into what are your business priorities does help people better align. For example, in Ironic, we had a couple contributors get on a call yesterday, or I guess it was yesterday. We're like, here's my business perception. And we used in those we framed the discussion around that, and we were actually able to go, we kind of better understand why we're looking at this one aspect for this aspect over here, because then people are better able to understand, and then we're better able to build consensus, because everything's shiny, everything has the same value. And we might do one or two things because we see a better way in the path forward, but we still have our business priority over here that we're also going to try and push forward. And framing that and helping provide that prioritization makes that discussion a lot easier, actually, and helps reduce the cycling behind, the hiding of, I've got my cards, I'm holding them close to my chest. Well, you don't need to hold them that close. You can share a card. And then you can build consensus together and possibly horse trade. Like, hey, you do that, I can do this for you.
It's a social dynamic that I think a lot of people maybe kind of inherently know, but don't think about a lot. The majority of the people contributing successfully to the project are working on things that they've been asked by their employer to work on, and because they're being paid to contribute to OpenStack. And I think it's helpful to be transparent about, like, I'm working on this feature because my employer sees value in being able to integrate it into our product or our service offering or what have you. And that allows, like I say, to be able to reframe team prioritization a little more quickly. I had some prompts here. So, like, if you've had a chance to kind of skim through, if you didn't see them on the mailing list previously, like, are the challenges that are mentioned here and some of the recommendations around them that make sense? Like, are these challenges you've seen personally, or you have colleagues who have run into them? Are these solutions that you think would help improve the situation? And also, like, we can kind of jump into, depending on, like, what the audience breakdown is here, I've sort of tried to structure this so that we either talk about challenges that you've encountered regularly and what we think the underlying causes might be. We can try to talk more about, like, the recommendations that are here and in what ways are they actionable, or if there are new recommendations that are not really taken into account there.
I think there's an opportunity to do more mentoring. And I think the problem is we've kind of always bucketed authority and reviews and approval of code merging as the same access right. I think that's kind of a mistake, because then we have this exclusive club. Realities, it shouldn't be an exclusive club. Lowering what that means makes it a little easier to grow people, build trust.
One thing I don't see there that I thought the old Solaris, operating system team had was they had a concept of shrink to fit. You have all these procedures that are very important and everyone agrees, but when you've got some tiny change, consider omitting things. So what I have in mind is a guy on my team, formerly on my team, found a place where there's a variable that's used, and it was 0. So you put a check in for, is it null? And the reviewers are like, well, you need to have this, you need to have that, you need to have the other. And he's just like I'm not going to turn up and contribute a tiny little thing that was to crash, and then go and do 10 times the amount of work again to get it landed, just because you guys have your, I don't mean you guys, you know what I mean, like the people looking at it think all of the process is mandatory every single time, right?
So there was a very timely article that I linked up there under other resources, code review anti-patterns link there. And it is a fairly amusing, semi-satirical account of how to drive contributors away. Like the various like poor choices that you can make as a project maintainer, particularly with regard to code review and some of the things that they covered were basically that, like you know, saying, okay, thanks for fixing that, but I'm not going to approve your change unless you also fix all these adjacent problems that were not, you know, just happen to be in the vicinity of the thing you're changing.
For touching this, you own it now, refactor it.
So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of amusing, but ultimately true things in that article that I think it's a good read. Anybody who kind of wants a quick breakdown of what not to do when you're running a project, or conversely, if you're a contributor and you're struggling and you're seeing these things, like these are, you know, signs that the review team is not all that healthy.
Yeah, I encountered nearly every one of those. I never, I want to change my mind, but I never, ever want to contribute again. It was a miserable experience. Just needed, I needed a tiny change so that, you know, and it wound up being, the ultimate result was no, we don't have the same hardware we're churning out code for. We can't do function tests, so we won't accept any changes. I don't know if you know, but virtualized GPUs are completely broken in Carrier. You can detach volumes, you can't create new ones. You can create new resources in placement. Those are only the ones that I've patched around. So I'm sitting on like half a dozen patches, make vGPU work with SRIV based GPUs, you know, ones that you can still buy. And yeah, I'm not contributing those. It's not worth my time. It's not worth the effort. Very bitter taste in my mouth. I would certainly like a way to review the reviewers, to give them feedback on the review process when they go off the rails.
Have those,
Those aren't readily available, you know, they aren't like,
Be willing to contribute them so that someone else can come and pick up that and maybe get them over the finish line.
maybe, you know, I've got a day job. I'm an operator. I've got, you know, like,
Be willing to also provide enough context so that we could, I don't want to use the phrase corrective action, but so we can provide guidance to the teams.
Sure.
One of the things I've found that I've had to do a lot of at times is basically coach and adjust perceptions. And a lot of times people strive for that perfection that they see. And the reality is, no, they're being their own enemy. They don't see it unless one.
and I encountered like imaginary, you know, review against imaginary code that didn't exist. Maybe they intended to implement some filtering. Wasn't there. Documented conventions like half part XML, so that, you know, you couldn't actually detach an MDev device, but that's entirely unnecessary. Libvirt won't do it, so half parsing it means that when anybody out there accidentally walks all the devices, then you get traceback dumps. Sender gets out of sync, and we worked really hard. We've been waiting for years. Been an operator for 10 years, and I've been waiting for that sender sync that finally happens. But then when you throw time bombs sitting in there in the code, then breaks all that. And now we're back to, I spend hours a day fixing database corruption by hand. So anyway, it's slightly better to be an operator these days, but in 10 years, it doesn't look like it's gotten any easier to be a contributor.
The one problem I think we've seen is the who the fuck are you problem. So we've got attempted code landing in Calico, Ceph, and Nova, and maybe something else, maybe Keystone or something. But in each case, it's a Bloomberg person joining community and they don't know who the hell they are. Meanwhile, other fixes or, you know, submissions land from Red Hat, and then some other Red Hat person reviews it immediately and does +1 or makes some comments. And I'm not saying corruption or anything. I'm just saying They know each other. Like, this guy's known, this guy's known.
In academia, that's automatically, there's the idea of conflict. Like, you are supposed to say, I've worked with all of these people, I have some interaction. They can never be a reviewer on a paper of mine because we are conflicted. We avoid all of that. And there's not that kind of thing. I'm not sure we can actually survive that.
No, I don't think we can have red hat.
Diversity.
Red hat.
There's not enough diversity now to do that.
One of the things that we have discussed in this context that is kind of around that is the limited capacity resource for reviewing has necessarily created a filtering mechanism, probably subconsciously, within the teams involved in maintaining these projects, that if they recognize someone, they know that their alignment with the project goals is consistent with their own. They are more likely to review that person's changes because there is a higher reward for being able to get work done faster. Because those people can basically interact with them in a higher bandwidth capacity. They've kind of built up additional capital with the team by working on other aspects of that project. So they just, I think, inherently prioritize reviewing of changes that are from more active contributors within the team, rather than trying to focus on reviewing changes from people who are relatively a smaller percentage of the overall number of contributions that come in. There are, I guess, some economies of scale that they might see in reviewing things from known contributors who, their interactions are more predictable and more regular. So, and again, I don't think that it's an intentional thing. I don't think it's necessarily even a red hat favoring red hat in reviews situation, so much as we'll see it more, I think, with people from an organization that is more active, just statistically speaking, because there are more of them. But I've witnessed a lot of those sorts of interactions in, say, the Nova team, not just between people who were working employed by Red Hat, but also other people who were active in Nova who were not Red Hat employees, but because they've been working on Nova for a very long time and have a fairly large volume of changes in Nova, their new changes tend to get prioritized naturally. And I think it's a more of a social dynamic playing out. But so definitely a challenge is finding ways to kind of bust that habit, or term.
One thing that frustrating, the right word is exactly, but it's the people that are trying to put patches through that maybe aren't well known in the community don't feel like there's a path to escalation. That it's not a company, so you can't go to somebody's boss and be like, oh, so it's not doing a thing. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like there's just locked out. Can't get your patch through, and so who are you going to talk to? And the people that you allegedly should be talking to are already closed off and don't want to talk to you because they don't know who you are. So, like, solving that problem, I think, would go a long way to getting new contributors in the community to go, oh, okay, this didn't work. I see that I need to do.
And that's definitely something that I think we want to include in the contributor facing documentation, is a clearer understanding of how the community communicates, because it's not all that clear to someone coming to it fresh where people are talking and how to get involved in the conversation. So it can seem like something is happening behind closed doors and there's no way in. for you to have a voice in the discussions. But I think in a lot of cases, it's just that haven't done a good job of making it obvious where those discussions are happening.
And helpful for me is to have a bug that lists the context and the error codes and all that stuff, right? That you can get prioritized with friends and family, right? And then if you're gonna write the patch, associate that with the bug, and there's, I think, a visibility too. Usually the initial step after filing the bug is then saying, no, this is real, here's the traceback, please read it. Pushback against the, no, you can't do that. That can't possibly happen. So you must be mistaken. It's your fault.
There's an intermediate step there that you've left out, which is trying to get them to look at the bug at all. This bug and nobody's noticed.
Well, usually, yeah, I in the past, I've skipped right over that and filed my fix that I already have in production.
And they notice that because, you know, they're in an IRC channel that's getting a notification that a new patch has come in, and they see a commit title that has some sort of catchy clickbait feel to it.
We also become in the habit of, I'm gonna fix it myself, so I'm not putting a bug in because I'm just gonna patch it myself. So that's understandable. And I also understand where James is coming from. If you make the bug and you attach the bug to the patch itself, at least it gives a little more historical information. You're probably gonna ever put in that comment you're committing. There is something to go back to. I know for one, I'd like it. Patch number for one of the ones you didn't get through because I want to see what happens.
I've had to advocate for my own.
I abandoned my patch. Because I was told it would never be accepted, so.
Well, I've also put in a single character patch for Ceph. And mind you, it was a tools issue that I'm a Garrett person and I like to patch on top. And it wasn't worth me to figure out how to use the GitHub tools, squash everything, than to put in that one character patch. So I get it. They weren't being mean. I just couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, fuck it. I don't need to be a Ceph contributor. So I see both sides of things, but we and the gentleman sitting to your left would like to fix the problem. So we need a patch so we can look to see what happened.
That's it.
I would say the unexpected part of my job ends up being every few months, I have a back channel discussion with, hey, need to adjust this person's behavior just a little bit, or they need to be mindful of this. And sometimes those aren't the fun discussions, but it's all level playing field. And we need to be mindful of everyone else's needs and wants. And a lot of times people just don't understand because they're so focused on what they need to deliver right now.
And we do know that some teams, it's easier to get patches in than other teams.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's a state of things. And Nova is one of the hardest projects to get anything in. I would say Neutron is the second. Ironic probably is now up there too, but they have some good ideas in place.
Meant from the back of the room.
I actually had a quick question about one of the kind of the practical aspects you raised, where the comment was, well, we don't have that hardware, we can't validate it on hardware. Is there an obvious place listed somewhere where like we can know what hardware you need? Because I know Jetstream and Chameleon, we have lots of different stuff, and it's pretty easy for us to make it available on sort of a short-term basis.
I got the go-ahead already to donate a $60,000 node to testing, but I can't be bothered to find the place. I saw it once. There was one place I saw where I could contribute, and then I've never found it again.
Me, Jeremy, can you help with that?
So there's this
So I can help with that.
there's this challenge of we used to largely rely on hardware vendors to do some level of testing and provide feedback and assurance that yes, this works, and then they would then publish their own thing. And what we're seeing is the hardware vendors don't care as much because they're basically chasing the AI land rush. And that means things are going uncaught, or they're making massive changes that, depending on how you use the hardware, oh, all of a sudden I'm very broken. And it's not a fun experience for because, you know, we don't have access to that hardware often. So I even know on some of the larger companies out there that are going, is there any way we can fix this? And there's some thought of can build something. And I think it's a discussion the community needs to have is can we build something or some sort of process or something? I don't know what this thing is.
The process that we've had to date is that some interest in support for particular hardware needs to have some system that can automatically notice when changes are proposed that might impact the functionality of that hardware, the ability of OpenStack to support that hardware or whatever, and then run some sort of automated tests to confirm that the proposed change still works with that hardware, and then automatically report back on that review with the results of that test. And that had been fairly standardized among like the Cinder storage device drivers, for example, as third-party CI system. You know, certainly for an organization that just has a vested interest in certain hardware, they use it internally. It's a pretty high hurdle to expect them to set up an entire external testing system that will key on proposed changes and report back in an automated fashion. It's a lot of work.
It is a ton of work. And the other problem is, for example, I have a recent issue with block device sizing. And this vendor has one model. That model you can order with 20 different storage cards. Actually, I think it's more like 17 different cards. 10 of them might be impacted by this. There's no way in the world they're going to allocate the number of machines to test that entire matrix.
Like maybe if we could come up with some sort of semi-automated or even not automated, but just manual validation testing recommendation that people who have this, please try this change out and let us know the results of these particular activities like that.
I know in Ironic, we've had a number of like Lenovo SR650 hardware bugs that it's like, this is an obscure system, even for Lenovo. If you contact them, they're like, yeah, this is obscure hardware. We very specialized use cases. And we've had bugs reported. And it's like, we don't have any of the hardware. Test this patch. The only way we're going to find out. And okay, yeah, works. Cool.
So to your actual question, like, no, there's not a structure of the exact kinds of hardware that we're looking for in different aspects of OpenStack that we lack testing on. It's more of a, like, as it comes up, people are using something in an OpenStack deployment. They would like to have some support or better support or not be totally broken. So yeah,
More specifically, continue to work and not
right.
not completely stop working when you slurp up.
Part of the reason I ask this is just because we have a, we have an API, so you can ask us, do you need this hardware with this serial number? Do we have it? Yes, you can get it as Ironic note. And we, open source, you can take our stuff and use it. Other people can use it if they want to set up a testing site with it. I'm happy to work offline.
Yeah, I think that's an awareness issue. And I think we should try and spread that awareness because I don't think we all know at times.
And that was a Chameleon comment.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there's just to muddy the waters further. There's also a bit of a challenge at the other end of the spectrum sometimes. So not so much in core projects, but in extended projects, we've had the case where we're running a more esoteric configuration. We propose a change and they're like, well, nobody does what you do. So, okay, sure, we'll merge it. Geez, did anybody look at it? Did it get tested? I mean, it went through auto testing, but not for our configuration. Because nobody does our configuration. Hope that's okay. You start to get this feeling like maybe I should not contribute unless I'm very sure.
I mean, it can be a risk analysis on the part of the reviewers. Like, you know, this is not something that is regularly tested, but I've got a person who utilizes this and they say this works. And so what is the likelihood that this is going to break a lot of people?
And it's passed our test, so we know based on our structure, it's not breaking anything. You're saying it's working on yours and you're the only one
Probably good.
affected?
I just remember seeing at least one of those patches go by and thinking,
It happens fairly regularly in a lot of third-party projects.
And if there are other people who are affected, well, then we'd like to hear from them in the future. And if you're the only one speaking up, then you're the spokesperson for that configuration, apparently.
owning that configuration. And it's
We're also about it. If anyone has any feedback, ideas, whatever they want to plug into Etherpad there, feel free to do it after the session, next week when you get home, whatever. I'll try to put together a summary of this discussion and we'll continue this at the PTG as well. I've got a session on PTG Monday, right? But also the technical committee agenda, we're going to talk about some of the more focused aspects of the topic as well. In those PTG sessions,
Tomorrow we do have the leadership meeting. The EC chair, the foundation chair, this chair, members. Continue these conversations tomorrow. We've got a double session. It's a meet and greet, but we're here to help answer questions and solve problems.
Coach and advise, all those fun words.
As we're saying, that's why we have such a long session, is so that we can help people.
Draft emails. Thank people.
Look at patches.
Let's see, like,
We maybe continue this conversation there.
What I'm saying, take advantage of this. Jeremy, I'm assuming you'll go up for it. We'll definitely continue conversations because these are kind of those conversations that are important to the board. and the tech community. I will preface this that none of the other projects are represented tomorrow in that session, only because they're not here. So there wasn't anyone to invite to say, hey, we're gonna add you to the session because you're gonna be there.
and also on that note, this series of Bridging the Gap discussions, we hope to be able to leverage this to the benefit of other OpenInfra projects as well, besides OpenStack. But OpenStack has been the most glaring example of where we see these sorts of challenges. And so it's, I think, the tough nut to crack, so it's the best place to start. I expect just from my interactions in the other projects that while they have some of these same challenges, it's at a smaller scale and it's more tractable. So OpenStack can serve as a good example for how we solve this more generally, I think. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.